It is 7 p.m. and Dr. Greger is here and ready to go. So let's get going. Thanks so much for everyone for joining us tonight and for supporting Veg Michigan through our membership. My name is Olivia and I'm the Media and Outreach Manager for Veg Michigan, and we're so happy to have you with us tonight. We are very honored to have Dr. Greger with us this evening, and I'm sure for the majority of everyone with us tonight, he needs no introduction, but however, just in case, let me tell you a little bit about him. Dr. Greger is a physician, he's a best-selling author and internationally renowned speaker. He is leading the movement when it comes to sharing the health benefits of a plant-based diet in America and across the globe. With his wealth of knowledge and a great sense of humor, Dr. Greger is bringing more and more people into the plant-based community every day. Dr. Greger is also the founder of the nonprofit nutritionfacts.org, where you can watch videos of him speaking on almost every nutrition-related topic imaginable. Definitely check it out and you will find an abundance of helpful information. And if you have any more questions after tonight, nutritionfacts.org is the place to go get some answers. Dr. Greger is always a fan favorite when he speaks at Veg Michigan's Veg Fest. And I also must mention that in a 2018 interview with Chef AJ, Dr. Greger said that his favorite place he had spoken was Veg Michigan's Veg Fest, where he spoke to a huge crowd of thousands of people who all packed into one room to hear him share his plant-based knowledge. Everyone at Veg Michigan would like to thank you, Dr. Greger, for speaking at our Veg Fests and for always staying late to sign books for everyone, even after the event has ended. We really appreciate it. And we cannot wait to have you back in person at Veg Fest when it's all safe for us to gather again. And lastly, before we begin, I want to let you all know to stay until the end of the Q&A because we will be raffling off one of Dr. Greger's books to one lucky winner. The winner can choose whichever one of the books they want. And also, if you don't end up winning the book in our raffle, we highly recommend you purchase one for yourself, as they are incredibly informative. And also, Dr. Greger donates all of his book proceeds to charity. So it's really a win-win. You can't go wrong. All right, so welcome so much, Dr. Greger, and thank you again for being here with us tonight. And
so happy to be here. I think that Veg Michigan event was my longest book signing line ever. I think it was like 4 hours or something. But gosh darn it, I was going to stay until everyone had their book signed.
And we all so greatly appreciate it, every single one. Thank you so much.
Looking forward to coming back with the next one in 2023.
Hopefully 2022. We'll see.
Well, the book isn't going to be out until December 2022.
Okay.
But hopefully by 2023, we will be able to be in person.
Absolutely. That would be wonderful. Okay, let's get going. All right, so the first question is, if I prefer to exercise in the morning, when should I eat my first meal of the day? Before or after
that's
exercise?
A great question. I got a whole chapter on that in how not to diet. And the answer is you exercise before breakfast, unless you're diabetic, in which you exercise after breakfast. But if you're non-diabetic, exercise before breakfast. And so you can eat anytime after you exercise.
There you go. Okay, how much omega-3s, DHA and EPA should we eat each day? And is it okay to get them through supplements or only through whole foods?
Well, the only pollutant-free way to get those long chains preformed would be through supplements. And so you could take 250 milligrams of DHA and or EPA every day. Or we can rely on our own body making those substances from the short chain omega-3s found in flax and walnuts, hemp seeds. One of the reasons I encourage people to eat a tablespoon of ground flax seeds in the daily diet is part of my daily dozen checklist of all the healthiest of healthy foods I encourage people to fit into their daily routine. It's unclear, though, if we're going to make enough for optimal cognitive health, particularly for men, particularly as they age. And so particularly older men should consider supplementing with a pollutant-free, meaning algae or yeast-based source of preformed DHA.
All right, good to know. Can you give us an example of a typical meal you eat on a regular basis? Is there just one food you recommend people eat each day?
There's a dozen, my daily dozen. But in terms of meals, I actually have a new cooking video coming out in beginning of March. We have a new, we're putting up a new recipe page on nutritionfacts.org, and to celebrate it, I thought I'd put my chef's hat back on and get back in the kitchen. And that is creating, creating one of my favorite breakfasts. I'll keep that secret for so I don't spoiler alert anything. But another thing I've been eating a lot lately is kind of this. I don't know what I'm going to call it in the next book. The next book is on longevity, called How Not to Age. It's kind of my Okinawan smoothie, and so Okinawan Japanese, second longest living people in human history, as far as we know, in terms of formally studied populations, the longest living. So they eat about 98% plant-based diets. They eat eggs and fish a few times a week. The longest living population don't eat any meat at all. There's the vegetarian Adventists around Loma Linda, California. But the Okinawans are coming close. And we're not sure. And so beyond just being plant-based, they eat a number of foods that may be associated with longevity. One are purple sweet potatoes. 70% of their diet is sweet potatoes. They have a sweet potato centered diet. And they have these really bright, beautiful purple sweet potatoes, often known as Okinawan sweet potatoes. That may be it. They also eat a lot of turmeric, which is good for us. They also eat a lot of soy foods. So their primary protein source is tofu. And so I was like, oh, wow, I feel a smoothie coming on. So I make this purple sweet potato smoothie. So you can go to a local Asian market, get them really cheap. So you microwave it. I have a little potato microwave button on my microwave. So you basically bake a sweet potato in the microwave oven, or you nuke it. And then usually chop it in half, because I don't know, or unless you're making smoothie for the whole family. So a half of a small sweet purple sweet potato, blended together with a handful of frozen cranberries, or fresh, I guess, if you can find them. These days, I can't find any fresh. And then some unsweetened soy milk, and a half teaspoon of pumpkin pie spice that has cloves in it, because cloves are really good for us. A lot of pumpkin spice has allspice instead of cloves. And then turmeric. So I guess you could use powder too, but I could actually find turmeric root. And so you do like a little half-inch of turmeric root, fresh turmeric root. And then, tablespoon of ground flax seeds, of course. You got to have ground flax. It makes it really nice and milkshakey. And then you can throw in some like sweeter fruit, like acai berries or blueberries or strawberries for a little sweetness. And then, look, you're good to go. Blend it on up, and you have this like pumpkin pie kind of flavored deliciousness. In fact, I just microwave almond sweet potatoes, put them in the fridge, so I already have them ready for the smoothie. But even when I can't wait and want to eat it that morning, and I have it warm, so I mean, because it's not even cold yet. But then you have this like warm pumpkin pie kind of smoothie thing. It's actually really nice. So that's been one of my favorite things to experiment with recently, and it's very comforting during this chilly time of the year.
Absolutely. That's a great smoothie recommendation. Sounds great. Okay. Could you share with us some of the best foods to help with easy sleep? I toss and turn a lot before I'm able to fall asleep. Is there anything I can eat that will help me calm down and ease my mind?
So I have a whole chapter on sleep in How Not to Diet, because it's important for weight loss. And so I talk about two things. So I talk about sleep hygiene, and I talk about this kind of cognitive behavioral therapy. So you can read the whole thing for details. But, I'm so surprised people don't know really the basics of sleep hygiene. So they say they're not sleeping good. And then I actually say, okay, well, tell me about your sleeping environment. Oh my God, it's terrible. So what we want dark. And not just dark. I cannot see my hand right in front of my very face dark. So that means like everything's blacked out. Also, we want it cool. Even if you have to crack open a window in winter, you just pile on the blankets and you're like a little hibernating bear cub. And you put on a hat, but having it cool is important. That drop in body temperature is actually important for sleep. And then want it quiet. And if it can't be quiet for whatever reason, then white noise machine to try to keep the noise levels at least constant, so that doesn't wake you up. So we've got dark, quiet, and cool. Yeah, that's pretty good. And then like a bedtime ritual, taking a bath or shower beforehand, or even just a foot bath beforehand has been shown to help. And then there's all sorts of foods. You go on nutritionfacts.org, type in sleep, and I talk about the use of pistachios and kiwis, and there's a couple other things to help sleep. But a good sleep hygiene is critically important. And then all these cognitive behavioral things about only using, things to, if you can't sleep, what to do and when to go to bed and when to wake up, all that stuff. It's all in How Not to Diet. Check it out from your local public library.
All right, absolutely. Okay, and I just going off of that, still talking about sleep, can you talk a bit about the use of melatonin? Is that safe to use if someone has trouble sleeping? And what would
That's a
be
great question. Well,
use?
that's what the pistachios are for. They actually contain melatonin at the kind of levels you'd get taking a melatonin supplement. The problem with taking melatonin supplements is you don't know what's in them. And when they've actually been put to the test, when they went and got a whole bunch of retail bottles, they found that some disturbing contaminants, probably because they were just sloppy in the manufacturing process and didn't purify it. And that's because the supplement industry is poorly regulated. It has very few standards. There actually technically are standards, but they're not enforced. So effectively, there's no standards. And so you don't know what you're going to get. And so you may be wasting your money, or even worse, buying something that could be harmful. And there's the history to this. There was a whole rash of deaths tied to a supplement that's actually very similar. And so the contaminants found in melatonin supplements was actually similar to the contaminants that have been blamed on this other rash of disease and death. So I have videos about that. Just type in melatonin, nutritionfacts.org, but I would not take melatonin, not because melatonin is harmful, but because you don't know what else you're getting in addition to melatonin, because we have such poor regulation in our supplement industry. Better to get it in pistachios or from natural melatonin-rich foods.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, out of your daily dozen, are there some foods that I should eat earlier in the day and others I should eat later in the day? Basically, are there healthier times in the day to eat certain foods from your checklist, or does it not really matter what time?
It doesn't matter specific foods, but it absolutely matters when you eat food. We should try not to eat after the sun goes down. So no food after 7. But in terms of which foods when, as long as you're eating it early, and indeed earlier the better. We should try to weigh our calories earlier towards the day, have as big a breakfast as possible. But in terms of specific foods, doesn't matter. You can the other day, not this morning, but yesterday, what I eat for breakfast? Leftovers from the night before. It was the farthest thing from breakfast food you can imagine, but it doesn't matter. You don't have to eat breakfast food during, but breakfast food is like a made up concept by like cereal manufacturers. There's no such thing as breakfast food. You can eat anytime, any food, anytime, as long as it's healthy.
All right, good to know. Okay. As a woman in her mid-30s trying to conceive, following a predominantly whole food plant-based diet with a clean bill of health, are there things you suggest to limit or avoid? For example, I was reading your articles on arsenic in rice and lead in black tea. How much is too much?
So lead more is in a green tea problem, green tea from China. And really, really mostly a problem if you actually eat the tea, such as putting in smoothies or matcha, where you're actually consuming the leaves. It doesn't actually leach out of the leaves very much into the tea if you just drink the tea throughout the tea bag or the leaves. More an issue during pregnancy in small children and for small children as well. It's not just what you eat actually, but what your partner eats. And so I have a whole series of videos on fertility for both men and women. And so you can be functioning perfectly fine, but there can be conception problems due to what your partner is eating or doing. So yeah, I would check out those videos, and if there's anything I can do to help, let me know.
Sure.
You have to name the kid after me, but other than that, that's fine. Yeah, I can.
Doesn't seem like a big deal. That seems fine.
No, actually, I do have a namesake out there. My favorite cousin Nicole was asked when her baby brother was born what we should name her brother. And since I was her favorite cousin, she was like, Michael. And now I have a cousin, Michael.
I love it. That's wonderful. Okay, this is one more question about the arsenic in rice. It says, with Michigan having some of the highest levels of arsenic in its water, mainly those who use well water, should they avoid rice altogether? If they stop eating foods and drinking water that has arsenic in it, can your body get rid of the arsenic over time? And if we want to eat a little bit of rice, what kind should we buy and how should we cook it?
Oh, all sorts of great questions. Well, the good news is your body gets rid of arsenic that day. So arsenic is not like something like mercury, which can, or lead that can get stuck in your bones or stuck in your fatty tissues. Arsenic passes right through us. In fact, that's how you can tell about people's arsenic status is you just do a urine test because you just pee it all out. So the problem with arsenic consumption at the kind of levels we're talking about is chronic over decades. So if you're drinking, if you have high levels of arsenic in your well water, and you're drinking it every single day, all day, for 30 years, that's when we start seeing these bump in bladder cancer rates, et cetera. And indeed, bladder cancer rates because the arsenic is passing through your bladder, which is good. It's not sticking in you. And so you want to get rid. So if you stop consuming arsenic, then you stop exposing instantly. You stop exposing. Well, within a few hours, you get rid of whatever you have left. And so that's the good news. And so it's really just a matter of, okay, on my day-to-day basis, how can I reduce my exposure? So making sure I have a safe water source if there's ever been a problem attributed to your water. And then especially if you have arsenic in your water and you can't find a way to avoid it or filter it out, well then, yeah, reducing other sources is a way to do it. And so I encourage people to diversify their grains. There's wonderful grains that you may not have even heard of out there. I just put a video up on Nutrition Facts on sorghum. So anything you do with rice, you can do with sorghum. People like that nice chewiness of rice. Sorghum's even better. I encourage people to explore, think outside the box, and then you might find something you enjoy even better. And you're like, I don't care. I wouldn't go back to rice if you paid me because I found such better grains out there. So diversify your grains. I think the problem is really there are some people eating like a macrobiotic diet that eat like brown rice in huge quantities 3 times a day. And it's like, whoa, they are really getting a lot of arsenic in their diet. Certainly there's places you can buy rice from and types of rice that have lower arsenic. You can actually boil your rice like pasta and then drain off the water. That actually takes a lot of the arsenic out as opposed to cooking rice like we normally would. And it actually doesn't detriment the nutrients as much as you think. I've got videos on all this. Bottom line is not necessarily avoid rice, but just diversify your grains. That's what I do. So I used to eat rice all the time. It's one of my favorite grains. When I learned about the arsenic stuff, now I no longer eat it all the time. I still have it. I still have it in my house. And so I use it for things that I really can't use it otherwise. So if I'm just making like a stir fry or something, and would normally put that on rice. Now I put it on my roll, my barley groats, oat groats, lentils, and oats, oat groats, barley groats, rye groats, and lentils. This kind of prebiotic mix, which has all sorts of goodies for your microbiome, or you could use sorghum, something like that. But sushi, I have not found a good grain substitute for sushi. So I'm making sushi. I'll use the black rice. But I don't eat sushi every day. So I kind of leave it for special occasions.
All right, good to know. Let me see. How come most cardiologists recommend olive oil as a healthy fat? Where's the research disputing this? Is your analysis of the research on this is so clear that olive oil is bad for us? How come this is not mainstream nutritional advice?
Oh my God. Well, extra virgin olive oil is fantastic compared to most fat that people eat. So when a cardiologist says, stick with that, you know what we used to cook with? Lard. We used to fry in lard. Oh my God. Compared to lard, olive oil is so much better. It's a plant. Look, there's even phytonutrients in there. The fact that you can smell it means there's phytonutrients. There's something from a plant in there. The fact that you can see, the fact that it's not clear. Oh my God, there's like plant nutrients in there. Oh, there's antioxidants, all sorts of. Now it's better to eat the whole food. So what's an olive? Olive is a fruit. So it's like taking an orange, making orange juice. Saying there's nothing good in orange juice. Oh, it's still got nutrients. It's better to eat the whole orange, but you stripped away the fiber, stripped away the lot. And same thing with olives, right? You strip away the fiber, you strip away all the water soluble nutrients. That just gets thrown away, but you're still left with nutrients. And so it's like, do you want your fat with nutrients? Or you want your fat without nutrients, right? So, and you want, fat that's highly saturated or trans fats. So, compared to Crisco or something, so much better, right? And so look, if you're going to use an oil, that would be the best choice, extra virgin olive oil, because it's the kind of least processed, has the most of the plant in it. Still not good as the whole food, obviously. I would agree with that. Best oil, or the least harmful oil, would be extra virgin olive oil. That's what I would use if I ever used oil. But why use oil when you can use whole foods?
All right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay. As a physician, I learned years ago of the multiple studies showing the benefits of eating fish to reduce heart disease and dementia. Because of these studies, I advised patients to take fish oil. Then there were the large failed studies of fish omega-3 supplements that said only eating whole fish, such as sardines, reduced heart disease and dementia. Are there any planned or ongoing research studies comparing vegan omega-3s to eating fish?
So the latest Cochrane review, which is kind of like the go-to kind of gold standard for evidence-based medicine, found that neither fish oil supplements or advice to eat actual whole fish had any benefit in terms of heart disease. There's no reason to eat fish for the heart. In terms of brain health, the studies that have actually been like randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled studies that have actually shown an improvement in cognition, improvement in brain function after taking omega-3s were done with the algae-based DHA, pollutant-free, because they didn't want mercury and these other pollutants to confound the results. So a pollutant-free source of the long-chain omega-3s, DHA, EPA, important for the aging brain, and that's why I encourage people to consider it.
All right. Let me see. Cooking is one of my favorite things to do, and I've been learning more about different herbs and spices, but it can be overwhelming with so many different options. Do you have a top 5 list of herbs and spices that you think are the most beneficial to our health that I should be making sure to cook with?
Oh yeah, so just because they're beneficial doesn't mean they're the tastiest. But turmeric, black cumin, something that I discovered in my last book or 2 books ago, the How Not to Diet. Really amazing stuff. Garlic, or allium family vegetables in general. So it could be onion powder instead, but So garlic powder, turmeric, black cumin, those would be probably top 3. Okay, and then if we were going beyond that, cloves. Probably the most antioxidant packed substance on the planet. That's why I wanted cloves in my purple sweet potato smoothie. Okay, we got to pick one more. Let's go oregano again, because there's antioxidant content.
Sure. All right. Sounds good. Is it true that dairy causes osteoporosis? Please set the record straight for me and my family.
There was a study done out of Sweden. So they have high rates of osteoporosis, high rates of hip fracture in Sweden. They also have high rates of dairy consumption. So these Swedish researchers looked into it and found, I have a video about it, that in their cohort, men and women who drank more milk had significantly higher rates of fractures and higher rates of mortality, all sorts of bad stuff. But if you put all the studies together, do a meta-analysis of all the studies on dairy consumption and bone fractures, it all washes out. There's no benefit. There's a neutral effect. So eating dairy doesn't do anything for your bones either way. And so the question is, well, how do we explain the Swedish results? It's possible that it's actually the galactose. So lactose is actually broken up in your body into a sugar called galactose, which may have adverse effects on the bone. But lactose is actually eaten up in many fermented products like yogurt. Has less lactose than milk. And so if you just put all the dairy products together, you may kind of dilute the galactose effect. And so that's maybe why we saw higher rates of bone fractures in the milk drinking group in Sweden versus those that ate these kind of soured milk products.
Okay. All right. There seem to be multiple plant-based approaches to healthy eating and weight loss. I read your How Not to Die and How Not to Diet books, and based on the literature, you recommend eating 3 servings of whole grains per day. I started this journey with Dr. Furman's plan, though, and he recommends no more than 1 serving of grain or a starchy vegetable per day. Would you still recommend that someone who has been following his plan eat the 3 servings of whole grains? Should I be concerned that I will gain back weight by adding the whole grains? Would you also recommend limiting starchy vegetables?
I am a huge fan of Furman's work. So if you don't eat whole grains, you can get all the nutrients you want from legumes. Because botanically, it's basically the same thing. It's a seed, right? Anything you put in the ground and you grow a plant is a seed, right? You put a bean in the ground, poof, we have a bean plant. You put a whole grain, you put rye berry. That's what grains are, the little seeds you put in the ground, and poof, you have a rye plant. And so they actually botanically are very similar. So they have to have zinc, which is important for like cell replication. You have to have a whole bunch of things. And so seeds in general have have a similar nutrition profile. And so, Furman's a big fan of legumes, beans, split peas, chickpeas, and lentils. They have kind of a similar nutrition profile to whole grains. So if you want to eat beans instead of whole grains, fine. I encourage people to eat both. I think they're both fantastic. And Furman would agree they're both fantastic. But we're not talking about powdered grains, flour products. We're talking about whole intact groats. That's really the best way to get your grains.
All right. What nutritional recommendations do you have for someone with controlled Graves' disease? How important is it to avoid iodine? What might be the limit for iodine in this disease? And does Graves' disease impose any limitations with consumption of soy or soy products?
I have got a webinar coming out for you. Dun, 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 dun. Hold on. Let me find out exactly when this is. Beginning of March, I believe March, let me see, 4th or 5th. Let me look. March 5th, Friday, March 5th at 3 p.m. Eastern time, I have a webinar on the best diet for both hypothyroidism. I'm in a hyperthyroidism like Graves' disease. So stay tuned. You're going to love it.
All right. Sort of in the similar category, the autoimmune protocol claims success minimizing the effects of Hashimoto's thyroid disease, but is primarily paleo-based. Is there a plant-based alternative to control the effects of Hashimoto's?
That's the same webinar. Dun,
Same
dun, dun,
webinar.
dun. Best diet for both hyperthyroidism, Graves' disease, most common cause, and best diet for hypothyroidism, which is most often Graves' disease, this autoimmune thyroiditis, and a natural treatment for Hashimoto's. So both preventing and treating Hashimoto's. March 5th. Don't miss it.
All right, March 5th. There's someone else that asked about following a gluten-free diet for Hashimoto's. So March 5th, watch that webinar.
That's
Okay.
right.
Someone says, I'm a big fan of Dr. Greger and was so happy to discover his daily dozen plan, which I followed faithfully. In early December 2019, I got blood work done and my cholesterol's total of 264, HDL's 57, LDL's 158, which was worse than ever before, as are my triglycerides, which are 247. What do you suggest for someone whose diet doesn't seem to make a difference? Could stress be inflating my numbers?
So you need to talk to your doctor about looking for secondary causes of hypercholesterolemia, meaning non-dietary causes. So eating healthy, your cholesterol should fall like a rock down to really ideal levels. That's the center of the bell curve. And so there are a number of things that increase your cholesterol regardless of what you eat. And one of those, hypothyroidism, an underactive thyroid gland. So you should get your thyroid tested. Also having abdominal adiposity, visceral fat. If you have a lot of weight in your belly area, because that's spilling fat into your bloodstream. So even if you're not eating it, you can increase your cholesterol that way, in which case long-term weight loss will bring your levels down. So these are the kind of things you got to talk with your doctor. And worst comes to worst, then you have to start adding foods to your diet. If you really are eating a whole food plant-based diet, you start eating specific foods that pull your cholesterol down even more, like, the soluble fiber foods, like the slimy foods, okra, oatmeal, eggplant, these kind of things pull your cholesterol down. But critically important to get your cholesterol all the way down to normal. And not just normal, ideal, not US standard normal, but like normal for our species normal, which is a biology that evolved on almost exclusively plants.
Absolutely. Okay. Someone says, recently I've been experiencing a lot of sciatic nerve pain. Any foods I can eat to help relieve this pain?
So first of all, you need to go and there are some serious things that can cause sciatica. And so you probably need some imaging studies. But assuming your doctor has ruled out all the kind of serious stuff and was like, oh, what are you going to do about it? It's probably degenerative disc disease. And there is stuff you can do about that. The degenerative disc disease is caused in part by lack of adequate blood flow, so clogging off of the vertebral arteries that feed the discs. And so by eating a heart healthy diet, an artery healthy diet, a whole food plant-based diet, you should be able to improve waste product removal from your spinal disc, get some more oxygen and nutrients to them. And once the disc heal, then that nerve pain should go away. It's kind of a long process, but that's the best thing we can do for our spine, is to eat a artery healthy diet.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Is there a plant-based milk you recommend for a 12-month-year-old? They said they're unable to breastfeed.
Breast is best, 100%. And so if it can't be your breast, it should be somebody else's breast and not in the same species. And so there are these breast banks where women who have extra milk to donate can donate to breast bank. And wet nurses, all sorts of ways you can actually get human breast milk, which is the best way. Or you can start weaning. There's no reason anyone has to drink any milk after weaning. Just water and food will get you all the nutrition you need. But the healthiest milk out there, it would be unsweetened soy, fortified soy milk.
Okay, it's good info. Okay, someone just says, am I missing something in my diet if I feel fatigued? Sometimes for days and other times it's for only a day. Extended periods of fatigue.
Oh, yeah, no, it certainly could be. So there's lots of nutritional causes of fatigue. So iron deficiency anemia can cause fatigue. I'm not getting enough calories, right? That's where energy comes from. That can cause fatigue. So yeah, it's something if you're feeling excessively fatigued and you're getting enough sleep, the things, I mean, there's no reason for you to be fatigued, and you should see your physician and get some tests done to make sure there's no easy fix.
Absolutely. Someone else says, what is needed or missing to help speed with healing? For example, my cuts seem to take weeks to heal completely.
Huh. Well, so I don't think there's anything we can do to accelerate it if we have sufficient nutrient status. Now, if you have, if you're not eating healthy, then certainly. So, like for example, if you have scurvy, you have vitamin C deficiency, then that can impair wound healing. And so, eating vitamin C rich foods would make you heal faster. But if you don't have scurvy, if you're already getting enough vitamin C, adding extra vitamin C isn't going to help. Same thing with zinc. Same thing with protein, getting adequate protein. These are all things that involve in wound healing, but adding extra protein isn't going to help. So just having sufficient levels of proper nutrition should do it. Though if it really is pathological, like if you're like, wait a second, everybody heals a lot quicker than I do, you may want to make an appointment with your doctor and just make sure nothing else more serious is going on.
Absolutely. Good advice. Okay. It's common knowledge that a sedentary lifestyle leads to many health problems, but what do you suggest for those who work desk jobs but still exercise daily? Are there other ways to mitigate the effects of sitting for so long?
You need a treadmill desk like me. But if you can't get a treadmill desk, so like what if you're a truck driver or something where there's just no way you can avoid being sedentary, then in fact, that's funny. My treadmill just shut off. What perfect timing. After enough hours, like as a safety feature, it just shuts itself off. So I have to start it back up again. Okay, so yes, there is, and that's turmeric. So I have a video on this where they took people. So there's what's called endothelial dysfunction from the sludging of your blood. That just from the stasis, the pooling of your blood, particularly when you have your knees bent. So when you're sitting for prolonged periods, for like 6 hours at a time, the pooling of blood in your lower limbs causes your arteries to dysfunction. That can set you up for bad things. So there's a couple things you can do. You can exercise before you sit, and that seems to decrease it. You can take exercise breaks. So even just running up and down the stairs, I forgot exactly, but they did studies where just like 2 minutes running up and down stairs once every, 2 hours or something seemed to remove the bad effects. And worse comes to worse, if you really do have to sit down, then turmeric can help. I forget what the dose, you'd have to look at the video. They gave truck drivers some turmeric and were able to mediate some of that damage.
Good to know. I'm gonna try that, just running up and down in stairs every few minutes. Okay. Let me see. Someone in the comments is asking what you think about the FODMAP diet. FODMAP.
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 I've got some videos on FODMAP coming right up. Bottom line, though, even the people that came up with the FODMAP diet don't advocate the FODMAP diet. It's a temporary thing because they realize the downside. So it'd be a temporary thing to deal with irritable bowel syndrome symptoms. But no one, even the people that came up with FODMAP, think people should be on it long term.
All right. Someone says, please talk about bone density studies. The usual response is calcium supplements, which I recall you saying are not advisable.
Yeah, so we if your bone density is weaning with age, then you need to use it or lose it, right? Our bones are being constantly remodeled and are being remodeled to deal with whatever load you put on them. So in astronauts in space, I forget they lose some ridiculous amount of their bone mass every month, like 2% of their bone mass, something absolutely off the charts. And it's because their body's like, well, wait a second. Your bones are like, why am I wasting all this energy making strong bones if you're not going to use it? So you're just floating around without gravity or microgravity. And so your bones just dissolve right away. And same thing if you're sitting on your couch all day. And so it's just like if you had your arm in a cast, after a few months, your muscles would atrophy because your body's like, why am I maintaining a muscle if you're not going to use it? Same thing with your skeleton. And so weight bearing exercise, an hour a day, every single day, minimum, which seems like a lot, but you think about it, look, we evolved being active all the time. I mean, that's all we did was move. And so it's not too much to ask to keep our bodies active, to constantly signal to our bones that we need them to be stronger. You can wear a backpack or a weight vest, add extra pressure on your bones. It's particularly important for petite women. So skinny, light women, they're just not putting a lot of weight on their bones, even when they're walking around. Whereas people who are heavier, just walking around, puts weight on your bones. But if you're particularly skinny, then, like wearing a weight vest or something, will add that extra weight while you're exercising to boost your bone density. And then you have to get enough nutrition, make sure you get enough vitamin D, and the calcium should come from whole food sources, but you do need to get enough calcium, but best from low oxalate, dark green leafy vegetables.
Absolutely. All right. Someone says, please talk about intermittent fasting.
That's actually the biggest chapter in my book, How Not to Diet, is on intermittent fasting, just because there's so many different types. There's alternate day fasting, 25/5 fasting, fasting mimicking diets, time restricted feeding, all sorts of ways you can do it. Bottom line, and so I talk about the pros and cons of each of those in the book, but bottom line, early time restricted feeding is the way to go. That's something that I've changed my diet over. So basically we are trying to weigh the bulk of our calories towards the earlier in the day. And so we want to restrict eating to 12 hours or less every day. But the timing of that window is critical. You want it early rather than late. If you're going to skip any meal, you're skipping supper, not breakfast. And you have a big breakfast, more calories the earlier in the day, the better, and not eating after 7 p.m., after the sun goes down, for all sorts of reasons I talk about in the book.
Okay. How do you feel about supplements for malabsorption? Any other recommendations to correct malabsorption from poor diet?
Malabsorption from a poor diet. Well, if you have a poor diet, malabsorption is probably good. You don't want to absorb all that horrible stuff. I guess I don't understand the question. I mean, your body should normally absorb just fine. There are malabsorption syndromes, like celiac disease, for which affects about 1 in 120 or so Americans, for which dietary fix is critical, eliminating gluten from the diet, because it causes kind of an autoimmune reaction in those rare individuals. So that would be a situation of a dietary change that would help a malabsorption syndrome. Other than that, I'd have to know more exactly what they're talking about.
Okay. Well, it looks like it's 7:44, so I'm just going to ask you one more question. That went quickly, but as someone who loves pets and is an active member of the National Humane Society, what do you feed your furry friends, and how do you feel about Wild Earth's dog food? And also any vegan cat food options you have found?
I don't know that the company doesn't sound familiar, so I can't comment on that particular brand. But I You know, I'm a veterinarian, a very limited veterinarian in that I only know one species. Veterinarians, wow, I don't know how they do it. I could barely know enough about one species, but boy, they know all sorts of stuff. So I leave it to my veterinarian to recommend what food we feed to all of our animals, just because they're the experts. And then if they want to know what to feed their kids, you come to the right place and we can swap.
Sure, sounds good. That sounds like a good trade. Okay. Well, it's 7:45, so I don't want to take up any more of your time, Dr. Greger, but thank you so much again from all of us for joining us tonight. And hope
Such
to
a
see
great
you again
time,
at
such
another
good
Veg Fest
questions.
somewhere near in the future.
This is why I love speaking Detroit, Michigan so much, to Veg Michigan in particular, because it's such great questions, such great vibrant audiences. Can't wait to come back. And maybe it will indeed be 2022 because the book comes out in December. So maybe I can sneak in there before the holidays.
Absolutely. We'd love that. Can't wait to see you again. Thanks so
Bye.
much. Bye.